Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the What Life. It feels like a while since we've done this, but I do believe it's only been a week or so. Anyway, we are about to kick off, and first things first, let's sort this out. Here is a diagram of the screenshot I took of the race this morning when I said I was going to enter it, and it quite clearly says 1 lap, 14k, 100 meters vert. That wasn't actually the case, as we discussed this in the pen before setting off. Turns out that we were doing a rolling Highlands loop, which is fine, but it actually ended up being 2 laps, 23k with 183 meters of vert, which is very different to what I had initially thought I was going to be doing this afternoon when I signed up this morning. So just to clear that up with anyone who dived into the race and wanted to know whether there was a discrepancy, yes, indeed, it was meant to be a 14, or it was initially slated as a 14-kilometer race with 100 odd meters of vert. Nonetheless, everyone piles in. We are doing the 6:10 p.m. UK time Z Racing monthly event. We're back on the monthlies, and I just forgot how damn hard these early week Monday nights, Tuesday nights Z Racing events are, because this was absolutely nuts. So yes, this is Zwift kind of Cat B going mental. Really good numbers. Obviously that helps things in terms of the chances of all the crazies coming out the woodwork. So we had 135 to 140 riders. I think it was 150 odd people were signed up to do this particular race. But it ended up being completely brutal. Instead of one really, really hard lap, it ended up being 2 almost really, really hard laps. So I set all sorts of records during this race, and I'm very pleased with that. Guys, I started doing this, with the intention of just documenting my journey, just enjoying cycling, and seemingly we've managed to kind of just improve every now and again and just keep picking up these small little improvements along the way, and this is no different. A few things to point out: I did do a bike fit. I think that is having a bit of a impetus, I guess, behind being able to perform better, and I'll go into a few bits in a second, but I have a video on it, so check it out. There's a few tips in there about kind of cleat position and knee position when you want to move your saddle fore and aft, things like that. So if you are interested in maybe just, maybe no one's told you how to put a cleat in, and I imagine, you guys are all really good cyclists. I ride these Cat B races regularly. I know how good everyone is, but sometimes, you get to this point without really realizing. And that was what it was for me. I went for a bike fit, and there were just things I didn't even know about in terms of roughly where your foot is meant to be relative to the cleat in the center of the pedal, and roughly where your knee is meant to be relative to effectively, again, the center of the pedal. So there are these small things that you can at least just have a check and see whether you are within that ballpark. So there is that video that I put up the other week. But from a personal perspective, the reason I wanted to get a bike fit was I wanted to make sure that I was utilizing or a decent ratio between using my quads and using my hamstrings. So basically just trying to be as efficient as possible on the bike, so that when we're doing efforts like we're doing now up these climbs, that I'm putting the effort in and hammering down, and I'm kind of not overloading one particular muscle, whether it's the front of my leg on my quad or the back of my leg and it being kind of glute and hamstrings. I want to be able to work evenly. Now, obviously there is a huge factor in the fact that I have actually just improved. We are racing Monday evening. I did an Alp effort. I did an effort up the Alp, and finally, when I say finally, it was a second attempt up the Alp to put a time in, and I managed to get under 50 minutes. So that was Saturday night, and then last night I had 2 Zwift Academy workouts to finish the Zwift Academy, which I believe finishes today. So I had to do 2 short versions of the Zwift Academy workout last night. So long story short, guys, your boy's putting in the work, but it did mean that I kind of came into this race this evening hoping it would be a bit of a softer one. So I don't know why I decided to join a 6 p.m. race, because that was never going to be a soft race. And it just turns out to be an absolute tear-up. So, the fact that I managed to, from a personal perspective, hold this group, it was really, really, really hard work. And there were 100% moments where I wanted to drop off and not be part of it. But I did stick with it. And I think these small little changes, things like sorting my bike fit and, just the hard work that I've put in have helped develop me as a rider so that I can kind of just, I want to say, eke out. But the thing is that, I don't want to do myself a discredit, and I also don't want to be kind of egotistical about it. But in some senses, I have been trying to eke out those kind of final stages of these Cat B races. But if you watch the end to this one, guys, it's holding, and Baron, I'll give you the stats on what I hold for the race in a second. But it certainly isn't this wasn't an eking out stage anymore. I was semi-competitive, pseudo-competitive, if you will, on the final climb up to the finish. Now, if anyone knows the Scotland routes or the Scotland maps, this is actually one of my favourite routes. I really enjoy it. I like the nature of it, these short, sharp, punchy little climbs that aren't too steep, but steep enough to, like, someone who's my weight, 76.5 kg, really gets to kind of be in contention, because I think maybe if you're bigger, then you have to punch a bit harder on some of these climbs, and they're just long enough to kind of make it a bit more hard work, or harder than it needs to be. And then especially on a route like this where it finishes on that slight uphill punch, that's good for someone that's my weight, 76 kg. If you're an all-out climber, then it makes the flats a little bit harder. So a rolling route like this is just like, this is what I'm starting to think is my bread and butter. A few things to point out. First and foremost, the power chart on the bottom of my screen. Now, I went up the Alp on Saturday night, like I said. I finished that in just under 50 minutes, like 12 seconds under 50 minutes. And I set a new FTP, or my Zwift FTP updated from 288 to 289. Way. But what I have done is I set my FTP manually on Zwift at 305. So my power chart on the bottom is relative to the 305 figure rather than the 289. I think that's how it works anyway, because that's why I set it. I do that because I like doing my workouts slightly above my FTP. If I do an FTP ramp test or a step test, my figure comes out higher. If I do an FTP 20-minute test, it comes out lower. I'm just getting the hang of this, guys. But this race was punchy, and whilst we have a few moments where you can kind of rest and recover, you get this little castle climb that's the little kind of cut back on itself, that little loop round, which is super aggressive. And the thing is, this is what I really like about the end of this race, is fundamentally you get the castle climb, you get a very short, sharp recovery period, and then you go into breakaway bray for the absolute smash up the finish. Now, doing this lap 1, we had a very hot lap 1. I'll pull the figures up for you in a second. But let me give you some figures on the race itself. So like I said, it's actually ended up being 23k. I actually hit a bit of a PR for me. I held 4 watts per kg for 20 minutes within the race, which I'm super impressed with. Or proud of, I should say, rather than impressed. I'm super proud of. That was a kind of, I guess, benchmark moment for myself. But all in all, I hold 3.9 watts average. My wattage for the race is 295, which is normalized to 309. And these are the highest figures that I've hit all year. So these are all kind of like real steps in the right direction, but not small steps now. It feels like they are just like, let's just call them little strides in the right direction. This is Breakaway Bray, which I absolutely love, and I think, like, in terms of, again, I'm just not to go on about it, but bearing in mind my weight, bearing in mind the type of rider I am, this is the kind of finish that I'm kind of almost getting to the point where this is going to suit my style. I think in like 4 or 5 months, a finish like this will really suit my style. Not quite good enough to like punch with the big boys just yet, but I did have the whereabouts and the energy to stick to this massive group going up here, certainly on lap 1. I'm not sure who was pulling for this race. I'm not sure who was at the front, but guys, whoever it was, you are absolute animals, because every time I looked up, it looked like someone was attacking. So I didn't want to kind of make this video too long, so we scooch all the way through a lot of lap 2, because there are some key points within the race, but they happen to occur towards the back end of the race. So you got the castle climb and you got Breakaway Bray. Some stats for the race itself. Obviously, we are riding the Rolling Highlands course. The first lap we did, I personally hit a PR for the Rolling Highlands. My wattage was 299 watts for the 11 minutes 47 seconds that it took me to complete that lap. That was lap 1. Lap 2 was 284 watt average in 12 minutes 10. So really aggressive. But and then I will also add that my final attempt at Breakaway Bray, which we will see in a minute, was my all-time PR that I've ever hit on it. So guys, in terms of like my development as a rider, I honestly, if I don't really want to do it because I'd probably be terribly embarrassed, but if I was to go back and look at some of my videos from like March, April, and bear in mind it was about a year ago that I started doing this. A year ago I came back from working abroad. I jumped on Zwift. I didn't know anything about Zwift racing. I dived into some races. I was like, what the hell is this? It's crazy. It's a lot of fun. Started enjoying it. I thought, well, why not share a few videos on it? And it was about a year ago that I literally just signed up to Zwift and started getting a bit more involved. So to be at this stage now is like, it has been really interesting and it's been a fantastic journey, and I just don't want it to stop. I like to think that I've been very sensible about it, like not trying to overtrain, not trying to do too many miles. I think that's a little bit more difficult in the summer when you have to combine the indoor and outdoor. I will confess that at the moment I'm basically doing entirely indoor training, doing very little outdoor riding. I do not love the UK outdoor midwinter cycle scene. We're coming up to the winter solstice. It's not my vibe, guys, but I will throw down on esports races on Zwift anytime you guys kind of want it. And I do appreciate the messages. Anyone that's like, are you racing today? I do love it. I will jump into a race if as and when people kind of invite me, especially if it is a kind of 5-6 p.m. Z Racing monthly event. So the one thing I didn't notice or wasn't really 100% sure about on the rolling Highland route is this particular section here. This section can easily get you caught out. It's a climb that's actually kind of midway through the loop, and people push the pace without kind of it, because it doesn't feel like it's a hard climb. People do hammer the pace, and that almost caught me out on lap 1, but luckily enough, lap 2 I had the whereabouts to stick with it. We're about to hit the end of this race, so that gives us 2 key features left, which is the castle climb. I have a feather, and basically from a tactics point of view, you either use your feather on the castle climb to stay with the group and hold your position with that front group, or you save your feather and try and hold it for Breakaway Bray on the final sprint to the line. I was like, well, do you know what? I've got quite a reasonable kick, if you will, and you can see me just nudge 600 watts as we go up. I say just nudge. That's quite good, actually. Wait, 650. I mean, that's reasonable. I'm shocking myself there a bit. That was a pretty good punch and reasonably well held from me. So I decided not to. I decided to try and make this without using my feather, and if I can hold on to the front group, then that gives me kind of half a chance on, you know, not just sitting at the very, very back of this front group. And this front group was absolutely flying, guys. The boys, the big boys at the front who are putting down the kind of big boy watts and winning the race, you know, it is super impressive. But interestingly, the winners still only put 3.7 watts, 3.9 for second, 3.7 for third, 3.8, 3.7. So these guys kind of know what they're doing a little bit more than I do, because I have to keep kicking. And I think sometimes I overkick in certain points. This was my chance to recover, or everyone's chance to recover. The nice thing is, what I am finding now that I'm improving is that I'm able to get into a sprint from a higher heart rate. So, you know, that is definitely a sign of being able to improve as we hit this Breakaway Bray for the last time. And to give you the stats on this, I did this one in 51 seconds, averaging 458 watts. And that was a PR for me. Dive in on the feather, and then I semi-kick, or you can probably hear me kicking away. A few other guys have held their feathers off, and I realized that this is actually quite a long run-in if you kick this early. And obviously it's on a climb, so effectively it's going to be a double-barreled kick. So you have to kick once, take a big breath, and you're going to have to go again as the top of the road flattens out, and you've got to kick into that final finish. And this is where I just about managed to put a double in and just kick and pip a few places on the line. But all in all, guys, I am very impressed or proud, as I said, of that. No real major stats to shout about other than holding the 4 watts per kg for 20 minutes. But guys, we are moving in the right direction and I'm loving it. I will see you guys on the next one.